let's welcome Mr. Dorje Gurung, and I hope you'll enjoy this session.
Thanks. Before I start my presentation, I would like to embarrass your director back there, who's just stood up. Ayush, what you probably don't know is Ayush and I go back a long time. As a matter of fact, Ayush's uncle is my best friend from school, St. Xavier's. So he's been trying to get me to come here for a while, and I think it was, what was it, about 5 months ago, that he mentioned briefly, "Hey, can you come to my school, speak to my kids?" I said, sure. But here I am finally, after all that time of conversation and trying to coordinate and everything. It's good to be here. I've wanted to speak at Nepalese schools. I've spoken at different places in Hong Kong, in the US, and so on. This is only the second school in Kathmandu that I'm speaking. And it's good to be here. Right. What's your name? Roni Lama. Okay. How many of you are lamas? Who else? Just raise your hand. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 6. All right. Let's see. What's your name? Shika Baskota. Okay. All right. How many of you are Baskotans? Hands up. Yeah, that didn't sound right. Just one. All right. What's your name? Yeah. Busan Pakurel. All right. Busan Pakurel. Anyone else a Pakurel? No, just one. Okay. All right. Let's see. Any Newars here? 2. Is that it? 3, 5. Oh, that okay. Now the hands go up. What kept you? What prevented you from raising your hand? Right. Okay. There was a Pakurel here. How many of you are Bahuns? Like Pakurel here. Okay. Right. And Banskota, is that a Bahun or Chetri? Bahun. Okay. Any Chetris here? All right. Okay. Now, going back to you. What's a lama? Is that a tamang? Is that a...
Yeah, actually, tamang is like Gurung, lama Gurung mixed.
Okay. Lama Gurung mixed. Okay. But lamas are generally tamang, right? If you had to...
Yeah. And
Okay.
if you like search it more, it's more like Yormo people who write their caste Lama, but they are from Yormo. Helambu.
Okay. Helambu. Okay. But so, are they Sherpas or are they tamangs or...
No, like it's
different
yeah.
people. You learn something every day.
Yeah.
Right? You learn something every day. I always assumed that lamas were tamangs. Obviously not. Okay, so who else classifies themselves as Yarmo? Hands up. Yarmo, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yarmo, yeah. No one else? 2, okay. Anyone, any gurungs from outside Pokhara? Okay, 1, all right. 2, okay. A little shy, it seems, huh, the gurungs, to raise their hands. Right. Any karkis? And karkis are bounds, right? Chetris. All right, karkis, chetris. Any? I think I asked that before. Right. Any Biswakarmas here? No? Any Yadavs here? No? Right. Does anyone know who Biswakarmas are? What are they? Hands up. If you know who and what a Biswakarma is. Any pariyars here? Pariyar. Any pariyars here? No? Does anyone know who the Pariyars are? Come on, there's got to be someone here who knows what a Pariyar is or a Vishwakarma is. Or a Yadav. Come on. Thank you. Yes. So-called low-caste people. All right. You're all studying bachelor's degree? You're all bachelor's degree, bachelor level students, I'm been told? Okay. All right. How many of you actually knew that the Vishwakarmas, the Pariyars are Dalits, but you were reluctant to concede that? Hands up. You knew what they meant, who they were, but you didn't say anything. You didn't raise your hand. Hands up. Okay. All right. That's only about 10 of you. All right. That's interesting. Right. I'll come back to this. All right. I'll come back to this later on. How many of you identify yourself as a Janjati? Hands up. Janjati, yeah. Okay. Wow, not a majority. I'm surprised. All right, okay. Now, this should be easier. How many of you are women? Okay. Wow, okay, almost half of you. All right, good. Okay. Right, I'll come back to this later. I'm going to continue with the presentation. All right? Unlike many of you, but like one of you, I've been told, I wasn't born into privilege. I wasn't born into privilege. Being born a Tibeto-Nepalese from Mustang in our country meant that there was considerable odds stacked against me. That these odds may even be insurmountable. While I suffered in Nepal because of the circumstances and the context of my birth, they, however, did not determine my destiny. I was able to achieve my dreams. My dreams did take flight, and as a result, I achieved considerable professional and personal success. I credit that success, firstly, to the privilege of education, both formal and informal, and secondly, to humanity. Education and humanity made all the difference to my life. That discovery and the pursuit of my dreams has led me back home after spending most of the last 26 years, pretty much all of my adult life, abroad. It's precisely because of that, because I've suffered and owe my success to humanity, that I have returned to provide that same privilege to the next generation of Nepalese children born into the kind of background and context I was. And to inspire the next generation of Nepalese, like you guys here, like yourselves, to dream and become agents of change in our country. This presentation is all about the role humanity played in my dreams taking flight and why and how I believe humanity will save humanity itself just as it did for me. I'm from the little village of Thangbe in Mustang district. That little area that juts out into Tibet, that's Mustang, like a sore thumb. little village of Tangbe is in there somewhere. Okay? And as a child, I lived in our village with my grandfather. And just like most remote villages in our country, at the time, we had no indoor plumbing, no school, no phone, no refrigerators, etc. In other words, we hardly had any amenities. As a people, as you probably know, we practice Tibetan Buddhism, a religion that combines Bon and Buddhism. We also have our own language called Seke, a language that's quite limited. It doesn't have a script, it's only spoken. As of now, it's spoken roughly by 200 people. And so it's on the list of endangered languages, like a host of other languages in our country, sadly. Birth as a Tibeto-Nepalese, considered a low caste, like the Dalits, like the Vishwakarmas, like the Pariyars, as you might be aware, or if you didn't, now you know. And in a poor family, meant that I was not expected to make much of my life. I wasn't even expected to go to school. Forget about college, for instance. But my parents, who lived in Pokhara, wanted me to join them so that they could send me to school. My family had no history of education. After repeated requests from my parents, my grandfather took me to the city. Living conditions in Pokhara were not much better either. Again, we had no indoor plumbing, no fridge, no phones, etc. We were 5 of us in a single room. After a couple of moves, we ended up in a 2-room living arrangement. By that time, we were anywhere from 7 to 10 members, including cousins and relatives. I was attending a government school at the time. And I moved schools with movement of residents. Falling behind on my slides, right. And a teacher at the 3rd school, Bal Jyoti, I credit with starting me on this incredible journey of education and discovery about the world and humanity. Realizing that I had potential, the story goes that this teacher took my dad aside and told him, "Your son has potential, but if you leave him here, nothing will happen to him. Nothing will become of him. Take him to Kathmandu and put him in a good school." Heeding his advice, my dad, my father brought me to Kathmandu, and to make a long story short, I ended up at St. Xavier's Godavari School at the foothills of Pulchoki. At St. Xavier's, I was encouraged and inspired by North American teachers to dream. They also provided me with the drive to imagine a world and life different, completely different from that in Nepal. My 5th grade teacher, Father Downing from Cincinnati, Ohio, for instance, was one such teacher. Apart from regaling us with stories of the U.S., he would bring former student visitors to the school to talk to us about their lives, just like I'm doing with you. Many of them either graduates of or current students at colleges and universities in the U.S. As a result, as a 5th grader, I dreamt of going to the U.S. for further studies and ultimately of returning home to help children from backgrounds similar to mine. David Beeston, another North American teacher, describing how winter in Kathmandu is different from that in his hometown in Canada, said something I still haven't forgotten. In winter, in Winnipeg, when you look out the window, all you see is white everywhere. Growing up surrounded by green hills and mountains in the far-off distance, I was intrigued. The other drive was to be the first person from my village of Tangbe to get qualification from an educational institution abroad. However, there was constant pressure to quit school and start working to support my family financially, since I was the firstborn and had 4 younger brothers. Furthermore, because I was from Mustang, Abhote, as we call people from Mustang, our society, our Nepalese society, continuously reinforced its lack of belief in me as I was growing up. In spite of all that, stubbornly, I stayed on in school and completed high school, becoming the first one from my entire extended family to do so. A family of 5 brothers and over 3 dozen first cousins, more than a dozen of them older than me. Then, in 1988, the next lifeline appeared, a full scholarship to the United World College of the Adriatic. One of the number of things I recall about my experiences at the United World College, one which always gives me a warm feeling in my heart, is the way my friends and their families took care of me and made me feel special during vacations when I couldn't afford to fly home nor to go on vacation to other parts of the country or abroad, outside of Italy, in other words. Every single school break, my friends would invite me to stay with their families. Not only that, over winter break, for example, the family would give me Christmas presents, Christmas presents, just as they would their own children. An Italian family not only brought presents for me, they also bought a gift to give to a very good friend of mine as a birthday present from me. During those 2 years, I was on the receiving end of incredible generosities and kindness. Also, during those years, I met and befriended students from all over the world, shrinking my world. Living in Duino, Italy, and traveling a bit in the surrounding areas and neighboring countries, I also got a glimpse into the natural beauty of our planet. I got a glimpse into the worlds I had only read about and the novels I devoured throughout my school career in Nepal. And it was during those years that I came to believe that we humans of different nationalities and different cultures, practicing different religions, had more commonalities than differences. Humanity, I learned, I felt, I discovered, tied us all together. Towards the end of my stay at the UWC, towards the end of my UWC experience, while keen to see and experience more of the world and its people, I realized my dream of going to the US. The scholarship I had been working for, scholarship that I'd been dreaming about since 5th grade, came the spring of 1990, taking me to Grinnell College in the United States. At Grinnell College, between 1990 and 1994, again, I met some amazing people and was on the receiving end of a great deal of kindness and generosity. Graduating from Grinnell, I became the first person from my village and maybe even the whole of Upper Mustang region to get tertiary qualification from an educational institution abroad. Approaching graduation, I knew what I wanted to do, and it wasn't to return to Nepal. Not immediately, anyway. The spring of '94, my last semester at Grinnell, one late afternoon, watching the late afternoon sky turning different hues every several seconds, my friend Aubrey had asked, "So, what do you want to do?" I remember clearly telling her, "I want to go see the world." But the trouble was, I had no idea how. As luck would have it, though, my former chemistry teacher at the United World College of the Adriatic invited me back to the college. I jumped at the opportunity, and that put me on a career of teaching, traveling, and exploring the world. For most of the 20 years between 1994 and 2014, I pursued a fantastic international teaching career spanning 10 different countries, from the United States in the West to Vietnam in the East, from Norway in the North to Malawi in Southern Africa, and countries like Azerbaijan, Hong Kong, and United Kingdom in between, expanding on my network of friends around the world still. By the time I approached the end of my teaching career, I had traveled to about 36 countries, and my network of friends spanned the world. I'd done and seen some amazing things in this incredible world of ours, and learned a great deal about it. I'd trekked to an altitude as high as 5,500 meters in Nepal, and scuba dived to a depth of 31 meters in the Philippines. I'd swum with wild dolphins off the coast of Zanzibar. I'd skied in the Swiss Alps, snow-camped in Norway, hiked in the Dolomites in Italy. I'd gone hot air ballooning in Australia, and had gone on wildlife safaris in Nepal, in Zambia, and the awesome Ngorongoro crater and the incomparable Serengeti Plains in Tanzania. I'd learned to play the didgeridoo, ultimate frisbee, and to dance salsa and merengue. And all the while, of course, I'd been planning to return home to fulfill my original dream. The only question had always been, when? In preparation for the eventual return, ever since leaving for the first time in 1988, I'd been visiting almost once every year. I'd been visiting our country, returning to Nepal almost once every year. During those visits, I would make every effort to visit my hometown of Pokhara and also my village of Thangbe. In Pokhara, I would visit the streets we'd lived in, and I would also make every effort to visit the government schools I had attended. Returning often was the only way to keep myself from losing my way back to the beginning, to where my life's adventure had begun. In the meantime, the educational opportunities I'd had, the professional experience I had, the travel opportunities I had, what I had experienced, what I had done, what I had seen, what I had been given and rewarded with, what I had been rewarded with by people I had studied, taught, worked, and traveled with. All those privileges I'd had, they had all been beyond the wildest imagination of the 1981 fifth grade kid at St. Xavier's Godavari School, dreaming of going abroad for studies and making something of himself. Not surprisingly, therefore, even as I was doing everything I felt I needed to maintain my connection to where I came from, those experiences would transform me into a person I hadn't imagined then. One of the most important transformations was that of thinking of myself as a human being first, and then everything else. All aspects of my identity, ethnicity, nationality, etc., coming next. Countries and nationalities stopped meaning much, especially since I had friends spanning the world. Countries represented more faces, people, and humanity than political and geographical entities. The other result of having the privilege of getting formal education in 5 different countries, working in 10 countries, and spanning 5 continents, and traveling to another 30 or so countries. The other result of those experiences was drawing certain conclusions about life and the world we live in. And here's the first one. At the core of that is the confirmation I felt I got for my belief in compassion, a Buddhist belief, and living by its dictates. However, having been born a Buddhist in our country, that's populated predominantly by Hindus, but also following Hindu cultural norms and practices, while attending a Jesuit school sometimes taught by Christians, having gotten a high school diploma in Italy, a Catholic country, and worked in 2 Islamic countries, etc., I've also realized the following about beliefs. One could make one's life meaningful by living according to a certain set of beliefs, but not insist or require or demand that others also believe them and live by them. Though I was born a low caste and made to suffer because of that, my experiences around the world, when my status changed drastically from one country to another, I have come to the following conclusion about caste and external appearances that indicate social status. Having also been born into a poor family, and everything else that followed, the following is also abundantly clear to me now. And those core values are none other than kindness, generosity, and compassion. In other words, humanity. That which I came across all through my life. That which I was a beneficiary of pretty much all my life. What I also came to realize, having experienced poverty and having seen it all over the world, everywhere I lived and traveled, is this. I met this porter on a trek to my village, somewhere between Tatopani and Zomsom, way back in the spring of 2000. The man's load was so heavy that he took maybe a step every 2 seconds. But because he was so poor and was paid so little, he carried his own food and cooking utensils so as to be able to save as much as he could. The poorest and some of the hardest working people in our own country and on the rest of the planet have the hardest time even putting a meal, a decent meal, on the table for themselves and their children. And yet, these very people, the weakest and the most vulnerable, the poor, the marginalized, and their children, are often treated the worst. I, however, have believed the following for a long time. Some of the weakest and the most vulnerable in our country are the children of poor families, children of Dalits, the untouchables, children of marginalized groups such as Tamangs and Tharus, especially girls. So, in March 2013, I'd finally decided to return home for good to help vulnerable Nepalese children, children from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Except, I would take a detour. On May 1st, I would be thrown in jail for allegedly insulting Islam following a minor incident in the cafeteria with a few students at Qatar Academy in Doha, Qatar, where I was working at the time. Unlike a number of other fellow Nepalese jailed on trumped-up charges, who had no help from anyone, on the 8th day of my own incarceration, once again, people came to my rescue. It began with friends of mine getting Doha News and Washington Post to publish my story. That was followed by people from all over the world coming to my rescue. Classmates and schoolmates from St. Xavier's schools, St. Xavier's School, both in Nepal and abroad. People like Ayush. Classmates and schoolmates and teachers from the United World College of the Adriatic, spread all over the globe. Classmates, college mates, and personnel from Grinnell College. Colleagues from Qatar Academy itself. former colleagues and friends from when I worked in other UWCs and other countries like Azerbaijan, United States of America, Malawi, etc. Former students from various UWCs, such as the Red Cross Nordic UWC, and former students from other schools I taught around the globe, etc., came to my rescue. They rallied behind me and initiated a worldwide campaign asking the Qatari government to respect my right to due process or to release me on human rights grounds. They mobilized themselves and their friends to get me out of prison, to right the injustice that had visited me. Thousands who had no personal relationship to me joined the campaign. The campaign had gotten so big, as a matter of fact, that within 4 days of initiation, I was released. I returned home on May 13, after spending 12 days, 11 nights, to the hour in jail. The reason behind my victimization, once again, had to do with the circumstances of my birth, being a Nepalese. The 20-month experience in Qatar in general, and the 12 days in jail in particular, was yet another lesson in pain, suffering, and redemption by humanity. What I experienced during those days in jail, you will most likely not be able to relate nor understand. I don't mean that you are not intelligent enough, nor am I trying to be patronizing. As a matter of fact, I hope you never in your life get to a point where you are able to relate to or understand experiences such as that. If you do, then that will unfortunately mean that you have suffered too. Having already reached bottom during my time at Qatar Academy, emotionally and psychologically, long before the incarceration, when the ordeal began the afternoon of May 1st, with a huge metal door to my private cell, closing with a loud bang and shutting me inside the cold, damp room. I had the feeling that the bottom had been pulled from underneath me, so to speak. Such despair, no one should have to face. No one. But there were others in jail, as well as outside, in Qatar and elsewhere, who had lost everything, and as a result, lived and continued to live with such despair every single day. And what's more, in our own country, and many others I have lived and traveled to, there are hundreds of thousands who live in despair every single day. In our country, there are families of migrant laborers, poor families and their children, families and their children belonging to low castes, etc. Families of or children such as Parvati, Sona, and Sabita. Parvati's sister, I'm sure, lived in such despair. Her sister was a mere child of 14 at the time she was sent to Malaysia to work as a maid about 3 years ago, dreaming, I'm sure, of providing a better life for her family. 6 months into her stay in the country, Parvati and her family received word that her sister was found dead, hanging in a room. Parvati and her family probably still live in such despair. Savita's mother too, dreaming of providing a better future for her family, went to work in Malaysia. After her 2-year contract ended, she called home to say that she would be home. She would be arriving home within 2 weeks. But instead of the mother, days later, Sabita and her family received news saying simply that she was dead. Sabita and her family probably live in despair. Currently, on average, 3 dead bodies of our countrymen arrive at the international airport in Kathmandu every day. How many families, such as those of Parvati and Sabita, live in despair? 12-year-old Sona, when I last met her, wanted to go to Delhi to work so that she could provide a better life for her younger siblings. Her dad had died in an accident, and her mother, though abroad in Lebanon, wasn't supporting her. Her sole adult guardian, her maternal grandmother, did not have the means to provide for the 3 young children. How many Sonas dot our countryside? Since returning home on May 13, 2013, I have been doing what I can to give back to humanity that gave me so much. Working with schools, catering to children from low socioeconomic backgrounds, vulnerable children. I'm doing everything I can, both through Committed, the organization I run with my buddy J.G. Bhada, and at times also independently. Committed helps government and community schools, schools where children from low socioeconomic backgrounds attend, schools similar to the ones I started my own academic career at in Pokhara, to ensure that they have a shot at a better life than their parents. Our main project site is the little village of Thangpalkot in the neighboring district of Sindhupalchok. The 3 children whose stories I shared with you earlier, Parvati, Sabita, and Sona, are children from this village, as are these children. No different from the rest of the district, Thangpalkot is mostly inhabited by a marginalized group of Nepalese people called Tamang. In addition to suffering from discrimination because of their lower status in the caste system, the Tamangs are also some of the poorest in the country. The district of Sindhupalchok also has the dubious distinction of being the district where girl-child trafficking to India began. The following video provides a glimpse of Raithani School in Thangpalkot, one of the schools we help in the village. Though the video was made in 2013 to woo potential donors to my fundraising drive, it gives you an idea of the school.
I want to be a policeman.
I want to be an engineer.
I want to be a doctor.
I want to be a nurse.
I want to be a teacher.
I want to be a doctor.
We're here in Sindhupalchok at the school that you're supporting. You've just heard the dreams and aspirations of the students. But there's a huge gap between their dreams and reality.
The reality is that the school doesn't have enough classrooms. For instance, this particular classroom, they have had to put 2 different classes together. And right now, there are over 50 students in here. The other issue, the other challenge here is the quality of teaching. Although the teachers themselves are highly committed, they lack experience and they lack training to help the students realize their dreams. I'm incredibly grateful for the support that you provided me thus far. I need one final push to get us past the tipping point, to help the children of Sindapalchok achieve their dreams.
Committed helps schools like Raithane with different projects, assisting them with acquiring resources and helping them build infrastructure. The most important project, however, is that of setting up a fishery, what we call a social business for education, to generate income for the school so that it is self-sustainable. In addition to that, on the side, I'm also heavily involved in the United World College movement. As a former student of the United World College of the Adriatic and former teacher of 4 different United World Colleges, the UWCs in Italy, Hong Kong, Norway, and the US, I'm intimately aware of the life-transforming experience a UWC education can be. As a member of the UWC Selection Committee, I'm involved in the selection of the next generation of Nepalese youngsters, concentrating my efforts into encouraging children from low socioeconomic backgrounds to apply and assisting them whenever and however I am able. For instance, last year, the candidate we selected, Iju, came from a family that could not afford the $2,500 or so in personal expenses, which I fundraised from my network of friends and acquaintances around the world. She's currently a first-year student, first-year IB diploma student at the UWC Maastricht in Holland. And just yesterday, we completed the second stage of selection process. We've got 14 scholarship offers from UWCs around the world. And we had 125 applicants. And we have now gotten to the second stage. We've just completed that. We'll have the final stage next month, February. And we'll be sending, hopefully, about 14 students to United World Colleges around the world. 4 or 5 of those on full scholarship. That brings me to why I do what I do. Why I do the kind of work I do in Nepal. I do them for 2 reasons. Firstly, to ensure that those children realize their dreams and have, if even on a small scale, the kind of incredible life I've had. Namely, to see and learn about this marvelous world we live in and the people we share it with. Secondly, and more importantly, to ensure that they do not experience the suffering, the pain, and the despair that I have experienced, which they invariably will, especially little girls and Dalit children, if no one does anything about their situation. I believe in international understanding, a phrase and a concept I was introduced to when I was a student at the United World College of the Adriatic. International understanding to me is nothing other than seeing the world through others' eyes, empathizing with others, being kind, being generous, being benevolent, being compassionate. In other words, displaying humanity. What's more, I believe our feelings for fellow human beings, our compassion and empathy for fellow human beings, and our ability to see ourselves in the shoes of fellow human beings will contribute to make the world a better place, a more peaceful place, a goal of United World College education. The whole point of UWCs, bringing students from all over the world to live and study together, is to help them learn about each other's cultures and countries, and in the process, build bridges of understanding, contributing to peace in the world. Having been on the receiving end of the incredible degree of humanity from people everywhere, from teachers, from when I was a young student at Bal Jyoti School in Pokhara, and all the way to Grinnell College in the US, from others in Nepal and abroad when I was a student, as well as when I was a teacher, and when I was jailed, from having had the opportunity to transform my life into something that was way beyond the wildest imagination of young Dorje of Nepal, I believe humanity is the only thing that will save humanity itself. That is yet another reason why I do what I do. And that brings me to you, all of you gathered here today. Having made it thus far, you have already accomplished a great deal compared to most of our countrymen. Having completed SLC, you're a member of a small minority of Nepalese. Having completed 12 years of schooling means that you are a member of even smaller elite group. And once you finish your bachelor's level, you'll be part of this statistics. In other words, you have had opportunities that most Nepalese don't, and probably won't, for a while still. And now, going back to the exercise I performed with you at the beginning, where we looked at your composition, when I asked for your names and pointed out how many of you belong to what jat and caste, I'm sure you noticed that many of you come from very privileged backgrounds, privileged castes. So therefore, the network and connections you have established and will invariably continue to establish because of your privileged birth and privileged opportunities will give you opportunities and power that most other Nepalese won't have. How you use that will be entirely up to you. My hope, however, is that you will use it to make your life meaningful, just as I have tried and continue to try to do. Thank you. Questions?